everyone. It's 4 o'clock in New York. Former FBI Director Jim Comey on the offense today in the wake of a brand new report from the Inspector General of the Department of Justice. Comey today suggesting that he's owed an apology from those who defamed him when they suggested he belonged in jail for leaking classified information, and insisting he would not do anything differently if faced with the same set of choices reviewed by the IG. From Comey today, quote, "I don't need a public apology from those who defamed me, but a quick message with a sorry we lied about you would be nice. And to all those who've spent 2 years talking about me going to jail or being a liar and a leaker, ask yourselves why you still trust people who gave you bad info for so long, including the president. The choices that were under scrutiny included sharing a memo Comey wrote about his bizarre interactions with Donald Trump. In one of those memos, Comey wrote about being asked to take a loyalty oath to Donald Trump. Comey also detailed the president asking him to see to it to let disgraced National Security Advisor Mike Flynn go. The substance of those memos about Comey's interactions with the president would ultimately become fodder for congressional testimony shortly after Comey's firing.
I hope, this is the president speaking, I hope you can see your way clear to letting this go, to letting Flynn go. He is a good guy. I hope you can let this go. Now, those are his exact words. Is that correct?
I took it as a direction.
Right.
I mean, as the President of the United States, with me alone saying, I hope this, I took it as this is what he wants me to do. Now, I didn't obey that, but that's the way I took it.
The Inspector General report released today did find that Comey violated FBI policy by sharing his memos with a personal lawyer. It's a finding that our friend Matt Miller, former DOJ spokesman and a frequent critic of Comey, describes this way. Quote, "The IG has basically faulted Comey for speeding on his way to tell the village that a fire was coming. Such a narrowly scoped view of the world." But the president and his campaign have come out swinging today, attacking Comey with their usual smears. In fact, Trump has falsely accused Comey of leaking classified information on at least 10 occasions.
Comey, who, by the way, lied and leaked, and also leaked classified information.
Then you see the lying and you see the leaking and you see Comey lie to Congress, nothing happens. You see him leaking, nothing happens. And this is leaking classified information. This is leaking really big stuff. Lies before Congress, which is just about the ultimate sworn testimony where Comey told so much, and he leaked classified information. Well, if somebody on our team leaked classified information, it would be years in jail.
The accusation of leaking classified information is one on which Comey today can claim total exoneration, as the Inspector General in his report finds, and I quote, "No evidence of this." And that is where we start today with some of our favorite reporters and friends. With us from the New York Times, FBI and national security reporter Adam Goldman, Washington Post White House reporter Ashley Parker, plus Harry Litman, a former Deputy Assistant Attorney General, former federal prosecutor Paul Butler, and with us at the table, Rick Stengel, who worked in President Obama's State Department and is a former managing editor at Time Magazine. Adam Goldman, let me start with you. The Comey story and the Trump story now so intertwined, so interconnected, that unpacking the IG report requires a little bit of slicing down the middle of all that connective tissue. But what is clear is that the central accusation levied by the president against Jim Comey, that he leaked classified information through his lawyer to your newspaper, is not true, not supported by the IG report.
Yeah, that's true. The IG came down pretty clearly that we didn't receive classified information from Comey, though the IG did say there was some spillage of classified information to the lawyers he gave memos to, but that didn't include the New York Times.
Ashley Parker, Jim Comey is the enemy that Donald Trump can't really function without. I looked at the poll numbers that came out yesterday, and it's miraculous to me that somehow Donald Trump's numbers were higher when he was railing against the deep state, railing against the FBI, railing against Jim Comey, Rod Rosenstein, and Robert Mueller day after day after day. And the president, at some cellular level, might have an awareness of that because he spent much of the afternoon attacking Jim Comey anew.
Yeah, the president is someone who his aides say, and he will admit this himself, is best when he has an enemy, an opponent, and often a single opponent. And so that's why when, for instance, the Mueller report finally wrapped up, there was some question of why is the president still going after Mueller? Why is he still talking about a witch hunt? And we saw in that statement that the White House put out today about Comey, the first line seems transcribed directly from the president's mouth, calling him, Comey is a liar and a leaker. This is something that the president's going to take this little tidbit, and if history is any indication, he is going to run with it through who knows how long, potentially through 2020, if it turns out to be a good rally line, if it turns out to rouse his base, something may be going negative on immigration, and he can return, for instance, to Comey.
Harry Littman, I want to step back for just a minute and look at sort of the sweep of history of what we know. The first 22 months of the Trump presidency, we really did focus almost exclusively here, at least, on this question of collusion with Russia and on the president's efforts to obstruct the investigation that Robert Mueller was conducting. How much of that was put in motion by what we learned from Jim Comey's memos? I mean, when the history is told, how significant will these memos be?
Very. I think it's the first moving force. And consider when the criticism that's coming from the White House, what might have happened. And it's very plausible if these memos hadn't seen the light of day, if Comey had left them in the bowels of the FBI, as Horowitz says he should have. You see how they're fighting tooth and nail to keep anything from coming out. If this hadn't emerged to the American people, the whole sort of storyline of collusion, of obstruction, might not have come out. It might have, but that's the real point. And next to that, sort of as Matt Miller says, the infraction that Horowitz railed against today seems, very secondary.
Paul Butler, I want to get you on the record on the, I think if you're in the middle, you see the IG coming down and saying that Jim Comey's behavior violated FBI policies. I think he also writes that he violates his employment agreement. But if you take Harry's response and Adam Goldman's response that there was no intentional leaking or release of classified information, it would seem that on balance, the public benefit and the protection to the institutions of learning what Donald Trump was doing, basically asking a sitting FBI director to see to it to let Mike Flynn go after he lied to the FBI as the sitting national security advisor, was met by learning what we learned from those memos.
Yeah, that's right. So Comey says, I'm a patriot, not a criminal. And in fact, the Inspector General referred this finding to the Department of Justice, which declined to bring charges. There's 3 levels of classification of sensitive information. There's top secret and secret, which go to national security. And then there's confidential. That's the lowest level. People are rarely prosecuted for leaking confidential information. Comey says he wrote these memos because he wanted FBI high-level officials to know that the president's conduct was bizarre at best and criminal at worst, and he was concerned that the president would lie about his interactions with Comey. And of course, all of those concerns were corroborated by the Mueller report.
Adam Goldman, I want to ask you just to sort of explain to our readers this practice of taking contemporaneous memos, because I know it's standard inside the federal government, particularly inside law enforcement, but you and your colleagues have reported on contemporaneous memos taken by Don McGahn and former Chief of Staff John Kelly around Jared and Ivanka's security clearances. There's been the reporting, obviously, of Jim Comey's memos, which tell an extraordinary story that the country was gripped by for 2 years. Andy McCabe was known to have taken memos. Is there, in your view or from your perch, is there more memo taking? Is there more salacious material in the memos being taken during the Trump presidency?
I mean, I would suspect others have taken memos, too. I mean, I think we saw a good sample of them with the Mueller investigation, but we can't be sure. I mean, there could be people keeping private diaries as well, which would be interesting. Nicole, can I make one other point about this IG report?
Please.
what's interesting is after the FBI learns about, the existence of these other memos, he'd given some to his lawyers, they frantically go and they collect them. And then the people surrounding Comey, the former general counsel Jim Baker, Lisa Page, Annie McKay special counsel, Pete Strzok, right, a top counterintelligence, agent, they decide to basically classify some of these emails, two of them, the confidential. So what struck me is if there's a deep state and they're all part of it, they're not doing Comey any favors here.
Well, let's stay there. I mean, it's a good point because Horowitz is a household name to any regular viewer of Fox, and he's sort of taken on mythical stature. The conservative media, I think, as recently as 2-3 weeks ago, around Mueller's testimony, was reporting that this was going to be much more damaging to Jim Comey. Talk about the impact of Horowitz and these sort of maligned as deep state actors basically churning out a product at the end of it that exonerates Comey from the most serious allegation being spread about him.
I mean, I think you can debate whether it exonerates Comey or not. I think what it does do to some level is exonerate the upper echelons of the FBI, who believe that if you read the report, they were shocked and surprised by what Comey did by Comey providing the contents of one of those memos that made it to a New York Times reporter. They were shocked by that, and they went through a rigorous classification review and decided some of these memos were not properly classified. And I think that goes to the credit of the FBI.
It's such a good point, Rick Stengel. I mean, the idea that there was some deep state clubhouse that had harming Donald Trump as its aim is just repeatedly and constantly blown apart as a theory on the case by these months and months and months long investigations. And maybe it's the fact that they take so long to wrap up that we forget sort of the charge, the accusation, the smears. But Aaron Blake did a good job early this morning of pulling out the 10 times Donald Trump accused Jim Comey of leaking classified information. You had a security clearance. I had a security clearance. I'm sure Jim Comey had a higher security clearance than I did. But being accused of leaking classified information is about the worst thing you can say about someone that served in that.
Yes, and it didn't happen. And I would urge everybody to read the OIG report, the Inspector General's report, because it gives an incredible insight into how government works and how incredibly meticulous the deep state is about secrets and classifications. The other thing is it exposes the fact that a secret doesn't come underlined in yellow. Men and women make decisions in government about what is classified and what is not classified. All the 7 memos that Comey wrote, he made a decision about whether it was classified or not, whether it was no forward to foreign nationals, whether it was top secret or secret. There's a kind of mystery to it, but it's interesting that people make these decisions. The other thing is, all of the top-level people at the FBI told him to keep contemporaneous notes. Why? Because the president was doing extraordinary things. Let's not lose sight of the big picture. He's keeping notes because the president is asking him to violate the law. The president is asking him to go easy on Mike Flynn. The president is reacting in ways that are unstable, unnatural, ahistorical. He wants to keep a note of that.
You know, Paul Butler, I'm reminded, too, that Jim Comey has now been on every side of the political punching bag, right? I mean, when he came out and wasn't going to prosecute Hillary Clinton, but talked about her conduct, Donald Trump celebrated him. When he, refused to see to it to let Flynn go, they fired him. I mean, there have been so many people ensnared in Comey's conduct on all sides of the question that I don't know if it makes him post-partisan, nonpartisan, beyond party. What is sort of the state of Jim Comey today?
The Inspector General clearly thinks that Comey has a big mouth. So this is the second Inspector General report that is critical of him. And the first, the Inspector General says he should have never had that press conference a few days before the 2016 election, making those accusations, reopening the investigation against Hillary Clinton. That was the wrong way to handle that. And here again, the Inspector General thinks that Comey handled this the wrong way. In fact, Nicole, but for Comey's actions, we probably would not have had a special counsel. We probably would not know all of the evidence of Trump's criminality that the Mueller report reveals. So I think in the long run, history will judge Mueller will judge Comey as, yes, having a big mouth, but in some ways being responsible for a little bit of transparency and accountability in the Trump administration.
Ashley Parker, I asked you before about how having this sort of DOJ fight on his hands seemed to benefit Trump with his supporters. It certainly helped with programming over at another news network in the primetime hours. I wonder how... I wonder what the opposite of that looks like. I mean, does Trump, we know that he asked Don McGahn to look into how he could prosecute Jim Comey and Hillary Clinton. McGahn served as a sort of a guardrail. I mean, what is sort of the war on justice 2.0 now that he's got an ally like Bill Barr there, now that we've got some of these investigations winding up? Does Trump sort of take his toys and go home, let Jim Comey live his life? It doesn't seem very Trumpian.
It sure doesn't. I mean, it's a great question. We don't exactly know. And there is a big difference between Trump's rhetoric and his tweets and the potential power he has as president of the United States to either overtly order an investigation or to encourage a culture where his subordinates, you know, sort of investigate people they think are the deep state rivals working against him. And so I think you can be sure that we will continue to see sort of in perpetuity anti-Comey tweets and statements and comments and gaggles and potentially chants at rallies whenever the mood strikes the president. The real question is, you know, if he stops it at rhetoric or if he tries to sort of look to a now very friendly Department of Justice to that point of view and push it further. I mean, it is notable, again, that as you said, this IG's report does exonerate Comey on the president's claim that he leaked confidential information.
Harry Litman, I wonder if you can just speak to sort of the wear and tear. I mean, Adam Goldman has a story a couple days ago about Andy McCabe's legal fate still dangling in the air. Jim Comey today, his day, whatever he had planned, I'm sure was altered by this IG report. There's an ongoing IG report, IG investigation, and another one out of the U.S. Attorney's Office, I think out of Connecticut, into the origins of the Russia investigation. I mean, there is still a long tail to all of the attacks and smears and calls for politically motivated investigations by Donald Trump. What does that look like? What are we not seeing? What does that look like behind the scenes?
Yeah, it looks bad, and it's really true. It's perhaps, as Ashley said, for political reasons. In a sense, you know, the war is over with the delivery of the Mueller report, but Trump wants to keep fighting for political reasons and because it's expedient to have certain enemies. And it's true that as long as this goes on, if McCabe is indicted, Comey might be a witness, Lisa Page might be a witness, you have the department continuing to be riven, and in the public eye also, its kind of capital, already overextended, still is being dispensed with this fighting on behalf of Trump against the deep state. Now here, you know, I agree with Paul. History will record him rightly as bending the rules when he decided, but they'll record him as having, it's a good thing that he did it here and these memos came to light. But it nevertheless provokes a whole new round of Trumpian rhetoric that plays well on the campaign rallies and continues to cause crises at the Department of Justice.
Adam Goldman, without putting you on the spot, this is your beat. I mean, what is sort of happening behind the scenes that we don't see with the ongoing sort of legal limbo that Andy McCabe is in, the disposition of today's IG report, but the ongoing investigations and the origins of the Russia probe? What is the legal status of the people you mentioned, people like Pete Strzok and Lisa Page?
It's a big question, Nicole.
Take your time.
You know, I think Andy's fate is going to be decided soon. Andy McCabe's fate's going to be decided soon. I think that the Justice Department has to be wringing their hands over this. Yeah. This would be an extraordinary decision to indict Andy McCabe. Typically, what you see in these types of internal investigations at the FBI, DOJ, DEA, these people are not prosecuted, they're fired. Right? That's what happened to Andy. It's very rare for somebody, in fact, to be prosecuted for making a false statement to the IG. Just today, the Inspector General's office released a damning report on this senior DOJ figure who had been looking at porn on his computers and lied about it to the IG. Of course, that person wasn't prosecuted. So I suspect that the Deputy Attorney General or others who are involved in the decision are weighing all that, and plus this case is politically tainted by Trump. Yeah.
No, since I have you, and I just remembered as you're sitting here, it is your byline on the story about Andy McCabe opening the investigation to whether or not Donald Trump was actually a Russian agent around Comey's firing. What do you think went through his mind when he saw Donald Trump at the G7 last week behind closed doors making the case and really spewing and repeating Putin's propaganda about getting Russia back into the G8? Seems like the kind of concerns that law enforcement had in the first place.
It probably re-triggered his PTSD from those days. But we're going to have to see where this goes. I want to make a point on Comey's legacy. We've had two big investigations. One, the handling of the Hillary Clinton email investigation, and now this investigation on his handling of the memos. We've got a third one coming up on the Carter Page FISA that he's going to be heavily involved in. To date, what we have are, yes, Comey made some decisions. He's been faulted for those decisions, but in each of these IG investigations, he's been found to essentially be a credible witness, right? Mm-hmm. And I think Mueller found him to be a credible witness too. So nobody's questioning Comey's honesty, and I think that matters the most to Comey. It's one of the things that matters most to Comey, and I think so far that particular aspect of his legacy has not been damaged. But we've got another big part of his legacy coming up with the Inspector General's investigation of the Carter Page FISA and how that was handled.
It always continues, never ends. Adam Goldman, Harry Levin, Paul Butler, thank you all so much for starting us off.
Thanks.
After the break, we turn to Hurricane Dorian.